Joe had asked Bob to help him out with the deck after work, so Bob just went straight over to Joe's place. When they got to the door, Joe went straight to his wife, gave her a hug, and told her how beautiful she was and how much he had missed her at work. When it was time for supper, he complimented his wife on her cooking, kissed her, and told her how much he loved her. Once they were working on the deck, Bob told Joe that he was surprised that he fussed so much over his wife. Joe said that he'd started this about 6 months ago. It had revived their marriage, and things couldn't be better. Bob thought he'd give it a go. When he got home, he gave his wife a massive hug, kissed her, and told her that he loved her. His wife burst into tears. Bob was confused and asked why she was crying. She said, "This is the worst day of my life. First, little Billy fell off his bike and twisted his ankle. Then, the washing machine broke and flooded the basement. And now, you come home drunk." A young man approaches a fisherman standing in the river. He waves to the fisherman and says, "Wow, great pole you've got there." The fisherman smiles, gives a slight nod and says, "Thank you." And man, that's some of the coolest tackle I've ever seen. The fisherman smiles and nods proudly. "Thank you. Some high-quality bait, too." "Thanks again," says the fisherman with a big smile. The young man peers down into the river, curious. "You know," he says, "the fish don't really come through here this time of year." "Yeah, I know," shrugged the fisherman. "Then what are you fishing for?" "Compliments." It's a nice day at the university when members of the teaching staff, a physicist, a law professor, a political science professor, a chemist, and a statistician walk into an office to discover the trash can is on fire. The political science professor says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything," and proceeds to exit the room. The physicist announces, "We must put the garbage can in the fridge so that the temperature will be below the ignition temperature and therefore put itself out." The chemist replies, "No, we must cover the garbage can so that the fire consumes all of the oxygen and, in the absence of reactants, can no longer continue." The law professor declares, "Please stop blaming the victim. You have yet to prove the can is indeed on fire." Meanwhile, the three turn around to find that the statistician is running around the room, setting everything else on fire. "What the heck are you doing?" they scream at him. "Getting a proper sample size." Jeff and his girlfriend Jenny decide to become bank robbers. Jenny does the actual robbing at gunpoint inside the banks, while Jeff waits outside as the getaway driver. They are initially successful with a string of heists that make headlines, and they become folk heroes. Until one day, their luck runs out and they get caught. At trial, the judge condemns Jenny to 10 years in prison, while Jeff gets 2 years. However, once they get to their respective prisons, they discover that due to a clerical error, Jeff will be serving 10 years and Jenny only 2. Despite of her insistence, Jeff convinces Jenny to keep quiet about it. After 2 years, Jenny gets out and she continues to visit Jeff faithfully every month, and they exchange letters and phone calls regularly for the remainder of his 10 years. Finally, after he does his time, Jeff gets out and is joyfully reunited with Jenny. They get married and move to a different state and start anew, leaving their life of crime behind. They raise a family with children and grandchildren, and eventually reach old age after having lived a happy marriage. On their 50th wedding anniversary party, the entire family and friends are gathered. A great celebration is had, with many laughs and stories recounting their life together. The conversation turns to the secrets to a happy marriage. One of the guests asks Jenny why she decided to stick with Jeff while he was in prison, despite all of the hardships. Jenny answers, "Well, you know you have found the one when you finish each other's sentences." As soon as he died, Juan found himself in a gorgeous place, surrounded by all the comfort and beauty he had dreamed of. A fellow dressed in white approached him and said, "You have the right to have whatever you want, any food, pleasure, or amusement." Charmed, Juan did everything he dreamed of doing during his life. After many years of pleasures, he sought the fellow in white and asked, "I have already experienced everything I wanted. Now I need to work in order to feel useful." "I am sorry," said the fellow in white, "but that is the only thing I am unable to give you. There is no work here." "How terrible," Juan said, annoyed. "I will spend eternity dying of boredom. I'd much rather be in hell." The man in white approached him and said in a low voice, "And where do you think you are?" Sometimes how a person acts reveals a lot about their profession. He reduces height and spots a man down below. He lowers the balloon further and shouts, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" The man below says, "Yes, you're in a hot air balloon, hovering 30 feet above this field." "You must be in IT, says the balloonist. "I am," replies the man. "How did you know?" "Well," says the balloonist, "everything you have told me is technically correct, but it's no use to anyone." The man below says, "You must be a manager." "I am," replies the balloonist, "but how did you know?" "Well," says the man, "you don't know where you are or where you're going, but you expect me to be able to help. You're in the same position you were before we met, but now it's my fault." A cop waited outside a popular pub hoping to nab a drunk driver. At closing time, as everyone came out, he spotted his potential quarry. The man was so obviously inebriated that he could barely walk. He stumbled around the parking lot for a few minutes looking for his car. After trying his keys on 5 others, he finally found his own vehicle. He sat in the car a good 10 minutes as the other pub patrons left. He turned his lights on, then off. He started to pull forward into the grass, then stopped. Finally, when his was the last car, he pulled out onto the road and started to drive away. The cop, waiting for this, turned on his lights and pulled the man over. He administered the breathalyzer test, and, to his great surprise, the man easily passed. The cop was dumbfounded. "This equipment must be broken," exclaimed the policeman. "I doubt it," said the man. "Tonight, I'm the DD, designated decoy." I took out my wallet, extracted $10 and asked, "If I give you this money, will you buy some beer with it instead of dinner?" "No, I had to stop drinking years ago," the homeless man replied. "Will you use it to go fishing instead of buying food?" I asked. "No, I don't waste time fishing. the homeless man said. I need to spend all my time trying to stay alive. Will you spend this on hunting equipment? I asked. Are you nuts? Replied the homeless man. I haven't gone hunting in 20 years. Well, I said, I'm not going to give you money. Instead, I'm going to take you home for a shower and a terrific dinner cooked by my wife. The homeless man was astounded. Won't your wife be furious with you for doing that? I replied, Don't worry about that. It's important for her to see what a man looks like after he has given up drinking, fishing, and hunting. While driving it off the lot, she decides to take it on the highway and really open things up. She hits the speed limit of 70 mph and continues to accelerate. 75 mph. 80 mph. And out of nowhere, a siren and the flashing lights of a patrol car come into view of her rearview mirror. Thinking her new car could easily outrun the police, she speeds up further until she's going well over 120 mph. But the cop is still in pursuit. Realizing how stupid she is being, she slows down and pulls over. The cop pulls behind her, gets out, and storms over to the car. The woman is so distraught and apologizes profusely and explains that she had just bought the car and made the dumb mistake of her life. Feeling pity and it being at the end of his shift, the cop says that if the woman can make him laugh, he'll let her go without reprimand. Thinking for a moment, she responds, Well, sir, about a week ago, my husband left me for a sheriff, and I thought you were trying to bring him back. Two women were sitting in the doctor's waiting room, comparing notes on their various disorders. I want a baby more than anything in the world, said the first, but I guess it is impossible. I used to feel just the same way, said the second. But then everything changed. That's why I'm here. I'm going to have a baby in 3 months. You must tell me what you did. I went to a faith healer. But I've tried that. My husband and I went to one for nearly a year, and it didn't help a bit. The other woman smiled and whispered, Try going alone. Next time, dearie. My neighbour was working in his yard when he was startled by a late-model car that came crashing through his hedge and ended up in his front lawn. He rushed to help an elderly lady, drive her out of the car, and sat her down on a lawn chair. He said with excitement, You appear quite elderly to be driving. Well, yes I am, she replied proudly. I'll be 97 next month, and I am now old enough that I don't even need a driver's license anymore. You don't need a driver's license anymore? That's right. The last time I went to my doctor, he examined me and asked if I had a driver's license. I told him yes and handed it to him. He took scissors out of the drawer, cut the license into pieces, and threw them in the wastebasket, saying, You won't need this anymore. So I thanked him and left. There was a man who had worked all of his life and has saved all of his money. He was a real cheapskate when it came to his money. He loved money more than just about anything. And just before he died, he said to his wife, Now listen. When I die, I want you to take all my money and place it in the casket with me. Because I want to take all my money to the afterlife. So he got his wife to promise him with all her heart that when he died, she would put all the money in the casket with him. When one day he died, he was stretched out in the casket. The wife was sitting there in black next to their best friend. When they finished the ceremony, just before the undertakers got ready to close the casket, the wife said, "Wait a minute." She had a shoebox with her. She came over with the box and placed it in the casket. Then the undertakers locked the casket and rolled it away. Her friend said, "I hope you weren't crazy enough to put all that money in there with that stingy old man." She said, "Yes, I promised. I'm a good Christian. I can't lie. I promised him that I was to put that money in that casket with him." "You mean to tell me you put every cent of his money in the casket with him?" "I sure did," said the wife. "I got it all together, put it into my account, and I wrote him a check." A wealthy old lady decides to go on a photo safari in Africa, taking her poodle along for company. One day, the poodle starts chasing butterflies and before long discovers that he's lost. Wandering about, he notices a hungry-looking leopard heading rapidly in his direction. The poodle thinks, "Oh, oh." Noticing some bones on the ground close by, he immediately settles down to chew on the bones with his back to the approaching cat. Just as the leopard is about to leap, the poodle exclaims loudly, "Boy, that was one delicious leopard! I wonder if there are any more around here." Hearing this, the leopard halts his attack in mid-strike. A look of terror comes over him, and he slinks away into the trees. "Whoo!" says the leopard. "That was close. That poodle nearly had me." Meanwhile, a monkey who had been watching the whole scene from a nearby tree figures he can put this knowledge to good use and trade it for protection from the leopard. So off he goes, but the poodle sees him heading after the leopard with great speed and figures that something must be up. The monkey soon catches up with the leopard, spills the beans, and strikes a deal for himself with the leopard. The leopard is furious at being made a fool of and says, "Here, monkey, hop on my back so you can watch me chew that poodle to bits." Now the poodle sees the leopard coming with the monkey on his back and thinks, "What am I going to do now?" But instead of running, the dog sits down with his back to his attackers, pretending he hasn't seen them yet, and waits until they get just close enough to hear. "Where's that damn monkey?" the poodle says. "I sent him off an hour ago to bring me another leopard." One sunny day, two men were sitting in a pub drinking pints of lager, when one turned to the other and said, "You see that man over there? He looks just like me. I think I'm going to go over there and talk to him." So he went over to the man and tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me, sir," he started, "but I noticed you look just like me." The second man turned around and said, "Yeah, I noticed the same thing. Where are you from?" "I'm from Brisbane," the man said. Stunned, the second man said, "Me too. What street do you live on?" "McCarthy Street." The second man replied, "Me too. What number is it?" The first man said, 162. The second man replied in shock, "Me too. What are your parents' names?" "Bruce and Shannon." The second man was awestruck and said, "Mine too. This is unbelievable." So they bought another round and continued talking as the bartenders changed shifts. The new bartender came in, walked up to his colleague, and asked, "What's new today?" "Oh, not much. The Murphy twins are drunk again,"